Jack Collins stared out the observation window of the U.S. Discovery as the massive ship slowed to enter orbit around the uncharted planet. The swirling blue-green atmosphere below reminded him of Earth's oceans, though scans showed this world was more land than water. "Dr. Collins, report to Briefing Room 3, came Commander Grant's voice over the intercom. Jack gathered his data pad and hurried through the corridors. As the ship's xenobiologist, he'd been waiting months for a new discovery like this. Most planets they'd surveyed recently had only basic microbial life. In the briefing room, 5 other crew members were already seated around the oval table. Commander Olivia Grant nodded as Jack took his seat. "Sensors are picking up unusual energy patterns on the surface," she said, activating a holographic display. "And there's evidence of structures, possibly ruins. This could be our first encounter with an alien civilization, or what's left of one." Jack leaned forward. "Any signs of current inhabitants?" "Nothing obvious," replied Science Officer Lisa Blackwood. "But the energy readings are strange. They fluctuate in patterns that suggest intelligence." Commander Grant looked at each team member. "We're sending down a landing party. Collins, Blackwood, Martinez, Chin, and Rogers. Standard exploration protocol. We don't know what's down there, so stay alert." 30 minutes later, Jack felt the slight disorientation as the transport beam reassembled him on the planet's surface. The air was thick and humid, with a faint metallic smell. "Readings show breathable atmosphere," Lisa confirmed, checking her scanner. "Temperature 27 degrees Celsius. Around them stood massive stone structures, partially reclaimed by vegetation with purple leaves and thick vines. The ruins suggested a civilization far more advanced than expected. "These carvings," Jack said, running his hand along a wall. "They're depicting some kind of conflict." Security Officer Martinez approached, his weapon ready. "Commander, you should see this." The team followed him to a large clearing where the ground was marked with deep gouges and scattered with what appeared to be bones. "These aren't old," Jack said, kneeling to examine them. "Whatever did this has unusual jaw strength. The cuts are precise, not random." Lieutenant Chen's voice came through tense. "Sir, I'm picking up movement in the tree line." Before Grant could respond, dark clouds gathered with unnatural speed. The wind picked up dramatically. "Electrical storm forming," Lisa shouted over the rising howl. "These readings are off the charts." Lightning struck nearby, sending them scrambling for cover. In the chaos, Jack found himself separated from the others, pushed by the wind toward a narrow ravine. He slid down the embankment and ducked into the entrance of what appeared to be an underground structure. "Collins to landing party." He tried his communicator. Nothing but static. The storm raged outside, forcing Jack deeper into the ancient building. His flashlight revealed a large chamber with walls covered in detailed paintings. They showed bipedal creatures hunting alongside what looked like large, sleek predators. A sound made him freeze. A soft click. Then a low rumble that wasn't part of the storm. Jack turned slowly. In the shadows stood a creature like nothing in Earth's evolutionary history, nearly 2 meters tall at the shoulder, with 6 limbs ending in curved claws. Its body was covered in iridescent scales that shifted colors in the dim light. But it was the eyes that held Jack motionless. Golden, with vertical pupils that focused on him with unmistakable intelligence. This was a Caryx. Jack had seen them only in classified reports. The galaxy's perfect predator. No human had ever encountered one and survived to tell about it. The creature moved closer, its movements fluid and silent despite its size. Jack backed against the wall, certain he was about to die. The Caryx stopped. It tilted its head, studying him. Then, to Jack's amazement, it sat back on its haunches, still watching him. Not with hunger, but with something that looked remarkably like curiosity. Jack pressed himself against the ancient wall, barely breathing as the Caryx continued to study him. His training had taught him these creatures were mindless killing machines, yet this one seemed deliberately holding back. "Collins to Discovery," he whispered into his communicator. The storm's interference produced only static in response. The Caryx's head tilted at the sound of his voice. Its scales rippled, changing from deep blue to a curious amber. Jack remembered reading that their coloration reflected their emotional state, though no researcher had lived long enough to document the meanings. "Looks like we're stuck together until that storm passes," Jack said softly, more to calm himself than anything else. The creature's nostrils flared, taking in his scent. Then, in a move that shocked Jack, it backed away several steps and settled onto the stone floor, eyes still fixed on him. Hours passed. The storm showed no signs of weakening. Jack's communicator crackled occasionally with fragmented messages from the search team, but the electrical activity in the atmosphere made two-way communication impossible. He caught fragments of Commander Grant's voice. 72 hours. Cannot risk. Stay sheltered." Jack grimaced. 3 days before they could attempt a rescue. His survival training had prepared him for isolation, but not with Galaxy's most feared predator as a roommate. As night fell, the temperature dropped. Jack carefully unpacked his emergency rations and heat blanket. The Caryx watched his every move, its eyes reflecting the dim light of his portable lamp. "I don't suppose you'd like to share," Jack said, holding up a protein bar. The Caryx made no move toward him. Outside, something shrieked, a native animal seeking shelter from the storm. The Caryx's head snapped toward the sound, muscles tensing. Then, with incredible speed, it disappeared through a gap in the ruins Jack hadn't noticed. Alone at last, Jack allowed himself to relax slightly. He ate quickly and set up his scanner to alert him if anything approached. Despite his exhaustion, sleep came fitfully. He awoke to find the Caryx had returned. Beside it lay the body of a small six-legged herbivore, clearly native to the planet. The predator had already eaten its fill. Jack watched in amazement as the Caryx nudged the remaining meat toward him with one clawed limb. "Are you offering me food?" Jack asked, incredulous. The Caryx's scales flickered purple-green. It nudged the carcass again. Jack had read nothing in the limited research suggesting the Caryx shared food. This behavior contradicted everything known about the species. Later that day, Jack spotted a small injured herbivore that had sought refuge in the ruins. Its leg was bleeding from what looked like a predator attack. Aware the Caryx was watching, Jack carefully approached the frightened creature. He offered it water from his canteen and wrapped its wounded leg with a strip of medical gauze from his kit. "There you go, little one," he said gently. "That should help." The creature hobbled away, disappearing into a crevice. When Jack turned around, the Caryx was watching him intently, its scales now pulsing with a deep violet hue he hadn't seen before. The next morning, Jack found the same injured herbivore near his sleeping area. Beside it was a pile of edible fruit. The Caryx sat nearby, watching carefully as the small animal ate. It had mimicked his caretaking behavior. Jack sat down slowly, maintaining eye contact with the predator. "You're a quick learner, aren't you? Not just a killer." The Caryx made a soft trilling sound. It pushed one of the fruits toward Jack with a careful claw. "We've been misunderstanding you, haven't we?" Jack said, accepting the offered food. "I wonder what else we've gotten wrong." By the third day, Jack had established a routine with the creature. They shared the large chamber, each keeping to their side, yet the invisible barrier between them was steadily dissolving. Jack found himself talking to the Caryx, describing Earth, explaining his research. When his communicator finally crackled to life with clear signals from the rescue team, Jack felt an unexpected reluctance to leave. Jack sat cross-legged on the stone floor, facing the Caryx. Between them lay a row of small objects: a rock, his water canteen, a protein bar, and a small light. "Water," Jack said clearly, pointing to the canteen. He mimicked drinking, then gestured to the Caryx. The creature's golden eyes narrowed in concentration. It extended one clawed limb and tapped the canteen gently, then made a fluid rippling motion with its scales, starting at its neck and flowing down its body. "That's right," Jack said, unable to hide his excitement. You have your own word for it. Over the past week since his rescue, Jack had returned to the ruins daily. Commander Grant had been skeptical, but allowed the visits once she saw the footage from Jack's recording device. I've never seen anything like this, Lisa Blackwood had said during the briefing. The intelligence level is off the charts. This contradicts everything in the database about Carrick's behavior patterns. Jack had named the creature Echo after its ability to mimic sounds. They had developed a simple system of communication, part gesture, part vocalization. Echo could now recognize over 20 human words, and Jack was beginning to understand the complex language of color changes, sounds, and movements that made up Echo's communication. Today, Jack attempted something new. He drew a simple map in the dirt, showing the ruins and the landing site where the Discovery's shuttle waited. I come from here, he explained, pointing to the ship. Where do you come from? Echo studied the drawing, then used a claw to extend the map, adding features Jack didn't recognize. The creature made a trilling sound and pointed to an area far to the east. Jack's communicator buzzed. Collins, report to the shuttle immediately, came Commander Grant's voice. Priority message from headquarters. When Jack arrived at the shuttle, Grant's expression was grim. They want us to capture the Carricks for study, she said without preamble. Admiral Schultz has ordered a containment unit. They're sending specialists. Jack felt his stomach drop. That would destroy everything we've built. Echo is intelligent, social. Captivity would be cruel and probably dangerous. These creatures aren't meant to be caged. These are direct orders, Collins, Grant replied. The Galactic Science Division is very interested in your Echo. Jack spent a sleepless night in his quarters. By morning, he had made his decision. When he returned to the ruins, Echo was waiting. The creature sensed his distress immediately, scales shifting to a concerned blue-gray. I need to show you something, Jack said. He led Echo deeper into the ruins, into chambers he hadn't fully explored. His instincts told him there was more to this place than they discovered. In the largest chamber, they found what Jack had hoped for. Wall carvings extending from floor to ceiling, depicting humanoid figures and Carricks together. The scenes showed them hunting side by side, building structures, even what appeared to be ceremonies. We've been here before, Jack whispered. Humans and Carricks working together. Echo approached the wall, tracing the carvings with a gentle claw. The creature made a mournful sound Jack had never heard before. Jack's scanner beeped, analyzing the age of the paintings. These are over 3,000 years old, he breathed. Echo turned suddenly, scales flashing warning red. Jack heard it too, footsteps approaching. Lisa appeared in the doorway. Jack, I've been looking everywhere for you. The containment team has arrived. They're setting up now. She noticed the carvings and stopped. What is this? History, Jack said firmly. Evidence that humans and Carricks once had a relationship, before we decided they were monsters. Outside, something heavy landed with a thud. Echo growled, its body tensing. It's a transport ship, Lisa said. Colonel Pierce is leading the capture operation. Jack stepped between Echo and the doorway. I won't let them do this. Echo isn't a specimen. He's a sentient being with a culture and history that intersects with our own. Echo moved alongside Jack, scales shifting to a determined orange gold. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. Jack peered cautiously from the ruins entrance. Echo crouched low beside him. The galactic military vessel dominated the clearing, nearly twice the size of the Discovery shuttle. Armed personnel established a perimeter, while others assembled a large containment unit. Colonel William Pierce stood at the center, issuing orders. He was tall, with a rigid posture and cold eyes that surveyed the area like he was assessing targets rather than a scientific site. That's him, Lisa whispered. He's led 3 operations against Carricks on other worlds. His unit has eliminated entire populations. Jack turned to Echo. We need to move. Now. They retreated deeper into the ruins, Lisa following close behind. Echo led them through passages Jack hadn't seen before, moving with purpose. "Where are we going?" Lisa asked. "I think Echo knows something we don't," Jack replied. They emerged into a vast underground chamber. Unlike the stone structures above, this room contained remnants of advanced technology. Panels with faded lights lined the walls, and at the center stood what appeared to be a communication array. "This isn't Carrick's technology," Lisa said, examining the panels. "The design signature matches artifacts found on colonies that were devastated over the past decade." Echo approached a wall panel and pressed several sections in sequence. The chamber hummed to life, ancient systems powering up. "How does Echo know how to operate this?" Lisa asked. Jack's attention was drawn to a holographic display that flickered into existence. It showed recordings of small, shadowy creatures swarming over landscapes, consuming everything in their path. Then came images of Carricks fighting these creatures, defending settlements that included what looked like human colonies. "These aren't the destroyers," Jack said, pointing to the Carricks. "They're the protectors." Lisa tapped her scanner. "These shadow creatures, they match descriptions of what the galactic military calls voidlings, parasitic entities that can move between dimensions." Echo made an urgent sound, scales flashing warning colors. The chamber's sensors were displaying real-time data, movement in orbit around the planet. "Something's coming," Lisa said, reading the alien script through her translator. Multiple signatures. Jack's communicator buzzed. Commander Grant's voice was tense. "Collins, return to base immediately. We've detected unknown craft entering the system." Before they could respond, the ground shook violently. "That was weapons fire," Lisa said. They rushed back through the passages toward the surface. When they emerged, chaos greeted them. Dark, writhing forms descended from the sky. Voidlings, just like in the recordings. The military personnel were firing at the creatures, but more kept coming. Colonel Pierce spotted them and marched over, his face contorted with anger. "Collins, what is that thing doing out of containment?" He raised his weapon toward Echo. "Colonel, the Carricks aren't the enemy," Jack shouted, stepping in front of Echo. "These shadow creatures are. The Voidlings destroyed those colonies, not the Carricks." "Stand aside, civilian," Pierce ordered. Echo suddenly reared up, its scales glowing bright crimson. It wasn't threatening them. It was looking past them. Jack turned to see a massive Voidling materializing directly behind Pierce. Before anyone could react, Echo leaped over them and tackled the Voidling. The two creatures rolled in a deadly battle, Echo's claws tearing through the shadowy form while the Voidling tried to engulf Echo in darkness. Other Carricks emerged from the forest, attacking the Voidlings with coordinated precision. Echo broke free from its opponent and rushed to Jack's side, scales shifting to communication colors. It made urgent gestures toward the forest. "Echo wants us to follow," Jack translated. "I think there are more Carricks nearby." Pierce looked from the dying Voidling to Echo, his worldview visibly shaking. "What's happening here, Collins?" "The truth, Colonel. The Carricks have been fighting these Voidlings for centuries. They're not our enemies. They might be our only hope." Another explosion rocked the ground. The sky darkened as more Voidling ships appeared in the atmosphere. "We need to make a decision," Lisa said urgently. "Trust Echo or fight alone." Pierce holstered his weapon. "Lead the way, Collins, but I'm watching that creature's every move." Echo turned and bounded toward the forest. Jack followed without hesitation, hoping he wasn't leading everyone into an even greater danger. Echo moved swiftly through the dense forest, occasionally pausing to ensure the humans could keep pace. Jack stayed close behind, with Lisa, Colonel Pierce, and a small group of soldiers following. The sounds of battle faded behind them. "How much farther?" Pierce demanded, breathing heavily. Jack looked to Echo, who chittered softly and pointed ahead with a clawed limb. "Not far now," Jack translated, though he was largely guessing. They crested a hill and stopped in amazement. In the valley below stood a Carrick settlement. Dozens of structures blended seamlessly with the natural environment. Unlike human buildings, these were partly grown, partly built, incorporating living trees and vines. And there were many Carricks, adults and younger ones, moving purposefully around the settlement. "My God," Lisa whispered, "it's an entire clan." Echo led them down into the valley. Other Carricks approached cautiously, scales shifting through colors of warning and curiosity. Echo communicated with them through a complex sequence of sounds, movements, and color changes. "They're discussing us," Jack said. "And the Voidling attack." An older Carricks with battle-scarred scales stepped forward. It wore what appeared to be armor on its front limbs and chest, technology integrated with its natural defenses. "That must be their leader," Lisa said. The elder Carrick studied the humans, then made a decision. It gestured toward a large central structure. Inside, they found what appeared to be a war room, with primitive but effective maps and communication devices. They'd been tracking Voidling movements, Jack realized, studying the markings. This attack didn't surprise them at all. Echo worked with the elder Carricks to explain the situation using gestures and drawings. The Voidlings had been attacking worlds throughout this sector for centuries. The Carricks had evolved specifically to fight them, developing natural defenses against the Voidlings' dimensional shifting abilities. "That's why they're such perfect predators," Lisa said. "They weren't hunting us. They were hunting them." A younger soldier spoke up. "If they're so good at fighting these things, why do they need our help?" Echo responded by activating a device that projected a star map. It showed the Voidling advance, hundreds of ships moving toward populated systems. "They can't stop them all alone," Jack translated Echo's gestures. "The Voidlings have grown too numerous." Colonel Pierce studied the tactical situation with a professional eye. "My ship has advanced weapons, but we're outnumbered. We need the fleet." A distant explosion shook the ground. The first wave of Voidlings had found the settlement. What followed was a scramble to establish defenses. The humans contributed their technology, force fields, energy weapons, and communication devices. The Carricks provided fighting strength and knowledge of Voidling weaknesses. Jack worked frantically to improve communication between the species, creating a simplified system of signals everyone could understand. Echo stayed by his side, learning human military terms with remarkable speed. "They're breaking through the north perimeter," a soldier shouted. Echo and Jack rushed to the threatened area. The Voidlings moved like living shadows, their forms shifting and flowing as they sought weak points in the defenses. The Carricks met them with coordinated attacks, their claws seeming to connect with the otherwise intangible creatures. Colonel Pierce joined the front line, firing his weapon at the approaching Voidlings. When one got too close, he wasn't quick enough to dodge. The creature's tendril slashed across his chest, cutting through his armor. Echo reacted instantly, leaping over Pierce's fallen form and driving the Voidling back with furious strikes. The Carrick stood protectively over the wounded colonel until medics could reach him. Hours later, the first wave was repelled. Jack found Pierce in the medical area, where both human and Carrick's wounded were being treated. "Your friend saved my life," Pierce said quietly, watching Echo coordinate with other Carricks across the room. "I spent my career hunting them, and it saved me without hesitation." "They're not what we thought," Jack replied. Pierce's expression hardened. "The main Voidling fleet will be here within 12 hours. We've won a skirmish, but the war is just beginning." Echo approached them, its scales showing determination. It placed one clawed hand on Jack's shoulder and the other on Pierce's uninjured arm, a gesture of unity. "I think," Jack said, "we need to learn more about our new allies." The brief night brought little rest. Jack, Echo, and a small team ventured back to the ancient ruins while others prepared for the coming battle. Jack believed the answers they needed lay hidden in the underground complex. "The Voidlings will be back with reinforcements," Lisa said as they navigated the dark passageways. We need something that gives us an edge. Echo moved with certainty through corridors that seemed identical to human eyes. The Carrick stopped at what appeared to be a solid wall, then pressed a sequence of barely visible symbols. The wall slid open, revealing a chamber they hadn't discovered before. Inside, they found what looked like a library. Crystal data storage units lined the walls, glowing faintly with internal light. At the center stood a large device, part computer, part holographic projector. "Can we activate it?" Jack asked. Echo approached the central console and placed all 6 limbs on specific contact points. The machine hummed to life, connecting with the Carrick's nervous system. A holographic display filled the room, showing scenes from an ancient past. Jack watched in amazement as the history of 2 species unfolded before them. "This is incredible," Lisa whispered. The Carricks were genetically engineered. The images showed humanoid scientists creating the first Carricks, designing them specifically to fight the Voidling threat. The Carricks had been guardians, protecting human colonies across multiple star systems. "They were made to protect us," Jack said, watching Echo's reaction. The Carrick's scales shifted to deep blue. Sadness, Jack had learned. The hologram continued, showing peaceful cooperation between humans and Carricks that lasted generations. Then came images of a terrible misunderstanding. During a massive Voidling attack, communications failed. Human reinforcements arrived to see Carricks covered in blood, standing among dead colonists. They didn't realize the Carricks had been defending the humans until the very end. "They thought the Carricks were the killers," Jack said quietly. The human forces had turned on their protectors. The Carricks retreated to remote worlds, continuing their fight against the Voidlings alone, while humans grew to fear them as monsters. 3,000 years of history, lost in translation, Lisa said. Echo touched the holographic image of humans and Carricks working together, then looked at Jack with an expression that needed no translation. Hope. Jack noticed something at the edge of the display, a technical schematic. "Lisa, can you make sense of this?" Lisa studied it carefully. "It's a communication device designed to disrupt Voidling coordination. The Voidlings function as a collective mind. Break that connection, and they become vulnerable. Can we build it?" "With the Discovery's fabrication systems, yes. But I'll need help translating these specifications." Echo made a determined sound and placed a clawed hand on the console again. Data began flowing to Lisa's scanner. "Echo's helping," Jack explained to the others. "The Carricks have kept this knowledge alive through oral tradition. They remember what we forgot." As they worked to extract the crucial information, Jack's communicator buzzed. It was Colonel Pierce. "Collins, we've got a situation. Galactic Fleet has picked up our distress call. They'll be here in 6 hours. That's good news, isn't it?" Jack asked. "Not entirely. I've informed them about the Voidlings, but they're still operating under standing orders regarding the Carricks. They consider them hostile. Unless we can prove otherwise, they'll target both species." Jack looked at Echo, who had understood enough to know the danger. "We have the proof right here," Jack said. "The entire history of human-Carricks relations. The fleet needs to see this." "The Voidlings will arrive before the fleet," Pierce warned. "We need to survive long enough to share this information." "We will," Jack said with determination. "We're working on something that might give us an edge." The Discovery's AI began translating the ancient language with Lisa's help. Patterns emerged, revealing a complex but consistent structure. "I've got it," Lisa said finally. "The complete schematics for the disruption device. And something else. The original Carricks language. It's similar to what Echo uses, but more complete." Echo's scales rippled with excitement as Jack attempted the first words in the ancient Carricks tongue. The meaning was simple but powerful. Allies again. The ground trembled. The second Voidling attack had begun. The sky darkened as the main Voidling fleet entered the atmosphere. Their ships were organic-looking, more like living creatures than vessels of metal and technology. Jack stood with Echo at the command center, watching the tactical display with growing concern. Disruption device is at 60%, Lisa reported, wiping sweat from her brow. The team had worked through the night to build the ancient weapon using parts from both human ships and Carrick's technology. Colonel Pierce limped into the room, his wound bandaged but still painful. Galactic Fleet will be here within the hour. I've sent them the historical data, but I don't know if it reached them. Communications are degrading as the Voidlings approach. Echo made a series of clicking sounds and color changes that Jack now understood. Echo says the Carricks are in position. They'll protect the device until it's operational. Outside, the first wave of Voidlings descended. Unlike the earlier attack, these moved with purpose and coordination. They targeted the settlement's defenses systematically, probing for weaknesses. They've evolved their tactics, Pierce observed grimly. They're learning. Jack turned to Echo. We need more time. Echo nodded and led a group of Carrick's warriors toward the front line. Jack followed despite Pierce's objections. The battle was unlike anything Jack had ever witnessed. The Voidlings flowed like living smoke, their forms shifting between solid and vapor. Only the Carricks seemed able to land consistent blows, their natural abilities allowing them to match the Voidlings' dimensional shifts. The human soldiers provided support with modified weapons, using the frequency Lisa had discovered to briefly solidify the Voidlings, but they were vastly outnumbered. Jack worked alongside Echo, using his knowledge of Voidling movements to predict attacks, while Echo struck with deadly precision. They moved as a single unit, human intellect and Carrick's strength perfectly balanced. Collins, Lisa's voice came through his communicator. Device at 85%. 5 more minutes. A massive Voidling, larger than any they'd seen, broke through the defensive line. It headed straight for the command center where the disruption device was housed. Echo saw it too. The Carricks pushed Jack behind protective cover, then charged the giant Voidling alone. Echo, wait. Jack called, but it was too late. The battle between Echo and the Voidling leader was fierce. Echo's scales glowed with battle energy, claws striking faster than Jack could follow. But the Voidling was powerful, its tendrils whipping around Echo's limbs. Jack couldn't stand by and watch. He grabbed a modified pulse rifle and fired at the Voidling, drawing its attention. The distraction gave Echo the opening needed. The Carricks drove all 6 claws into the Voidling's core, holding on as the creature thrashed and howled. Now Lisa, Jack shouted into his communicator. The disruption device activated with a pulse of energy that rippled outward. The effect on the Voidlings was immediate. Their coordinated attack collapsed into chaos as the telepathic link between them shattered. The Carricks pressed their advantage, driving the confused Voidlings back. Echo limped toward Jack, injured but alive. In the sky above, new ships appeared. The Galactic Fleet had arrived. Jack held his breath as their weapons systems powered up. "This is Admiral Hartman of the Galactic Fleet," came a voice over all channels. "We've received Colonel Pierce's data transmission. All human forces, coordinate with the Carricks' allies. Target the Voidling ships only. Repeat, the Carricks are not targets." A cheer went up from the human defenders. The fleet's superior firepower quickly turned the tide, destroying the remaining Voidling ships. Hours later, as medical teams treated the wounded, Jack was summoned to a communication booth. A holoprojector showed the full Galactic Council in emergency session. "Dr. Collins," the Council President said, "your findings have caused quite a stir. We've reviewed the historical data. It appears we've been fighting the wrong enemy for centuries." "The Carricks were created to protect humanity," Jack replied. "They never stopped fulfilling that purpose, even when we turned against them." "We've received similar reports from other systems," another council member added. "Humans who established communication with local Carricks. It seems your experience wasn't unique, just the first to be properly documented." Echo stood beside Jack, scales shifting to calm blues and greens. The Carricks placed a gentle claw on Jack's shoulder. a gesture now recognized by all as one of friendship. The Council hereby establishes formal diplomatic relations with the Carix nation. The President announced. Dr. Collins, we would like you to serve as the first official ambassador, given your unique connection. Jack looked at Echo, who made the Carix gesture for agreement.